Blockbuster. This is a relatively new Netflix comedy show about the last Blockbuster shop, and it's the last one because all the others have shut down due to things like streaming services. Ironic. I thought this would be a decent show. I liked the concept for it, I liked the idea, I think it had potential, and there's also a few faces here that you're going to recognise, so I thought it had stuff to work with. However, this turned out to be a pretty flat, dull, and unimaginative comedy show that didn't make the most of the concept it had. I'm not going to say I never laughed during this show. I did laugh a little bit, but I would say on average I laughed at one line per episode. There's 10 episodes, so I got about 10 laughs, I'd say, and even that sounds a bit too high. The problem this show had is that so much modern comedy is trying too hard and forcing it, and I feel like comedy should really be about relatable people and relatable situations, and just push it that little bit closer to the extreme to maximize on it. But this, like so many other movies and TV shows, just has characters that say and do things that no normal person would ever say or do, and it just takes things to a ridiculous level. The times I laughed at this show was when someone was in a situation that maybe I found relatable, or they just said something that was relatable and they put like a funny twist on it. Those were the times when I laughed. But that doesn't happen very often because everyone in the show is just an over-exaggerated goofball. Everyone is like saying too much, doing too much, trying too hard. It's hard to believe the people you're watching could ever be real people in the real world. Look at a show like The Office. I believe there are people that are weird like that in the world, with Martin Freeman's character acting as the normal person in that show. If you've seen it, he's like the guy that's normal and everyone else around him seems very just strange, but you believe that there are people like that out there. In Blockbuster, everyone is like no one I've ever come across. They talk like they're in a show, trying too hard to impress, so it doesn't land. It really feels like they feel that there's a camera on them and that they really need to just go like all in and over the top, and therefore it doesn't feel believable. These people would feel way more relatable to me if they were kind of like miserable, a bit more miserable, like they're at work, they're at a Blockbuster, they're at a failing business. Like, I feel like there would be a bit more of that. But here they're just all kind of being goofy. Outside of the comedy, there's not much substance to this show. Like, the characters don't really have much to them. Obviously, there's stuff to do with like romances, there's stuff to do with rivalries with other stores and people from other stores. And, that was somewhat interesting at times. Sometimes I was curious to see where something would lead, but for the most part none of the episode plots were that good and they were pretty predictable. I just think they missed a trick here. I think if this show was made like 10 to 15 years ago, the sort of the time when The Office US was being made, I think it would have slapped. I think it's a very good thing to make a show about. However, it's made now. It's had the Netflix treatment, so there's a bit of woke dashed in there, there's over-the-top characters, and there's some pretty ridiculous plot lines which just make what should be a funny, somewhat relatable comedy show none of those things. This is not awful. There's some decent characters in here and there's the occasional laugh. The best character I would say is Percy, and he doesn't even work in Blockbuster. He just sort of makes appearances. He was funny at times and, for the most part, I think he did a good job. But I don't think the issue here was the actors because they have a good cast here. It was the writing and just the way the writing was performed, just not very good at all. They have set up a second season of this. They kind of left it, I guess you could call it a cliffhanger at the end of the show. I would be very amazed if this gets renewed for a second season. I don't know if it already has, but the ratings for this, I've had a look, they're not very good anyway, and I don't think this really warrants a second season. But saying that, I think I would watch a second season if it came out in the hope that it would be better. Regardless though, this first season was pretty, just kind of flatlined, I gotta say. I would give Blockbuster a 4 out of 10. And on the rewatchability rating, I would never watch this again. If you've seen Blockbuster, let me know what you think about it. If you haven't seen it and you're thinking about it, you're not really missing out on much, but you might get some enjoyment out of it. It's good background TV, I guess, because you don't really need to pay attention. But even then, you may as well just play white noise. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.